Welcome to the Skills Development Team at the University of Wolverhampton's Guide to Presentations. The aims of this guide are to give you some hints and tips on how to plan, prepare and deliver your presentation. Things to think about. So why have you been asked to do a presentation? Well, your lecturer will be wanting you to demonstrate independent research, to demonstrate that you're able to work in a small team, to develop your verbal communication skills, and obviously usual academic assignment skills such as preparation, background reading and research. So initially, think about what you want to achieve with your presentation. Do you want to inform your audience, inspire them to think about your topic, or convince them of a particular point of view? What is it you're trying to do with your presentation? Think about your audience. What background knowledge do they have about your topic? Do they have any particular interests? How are you going to involve them in your presentation? Think about the kind of terminology that you're going to use. Are they your peers? Will they have sufficient subject knowledge to understand technical terms? Or will you need to use much simpler, more easily understandable language? And very importantly, how long do you have to actually give your presentation and get your points across? How to prepare. So just as with any other piece of academic work, preparation is key. So brainstorm on your topic, identify the main points you want to cover, and write a rough outline. Carry out the background reading and research your topic, but don't get carried away. Remember you've got a limited time for your presentation. Organise your material and write a draft. Think about the length of time you have to talk and the main points that you want to get across to your audience. Summarise your draft into points to write on overheads and or index cards. Remember at this point that a presentation is very much different from an assignment. You're not going to be able to represent an entire assignment on your PowerPoint slide, so you need to be able to summarise the main points that you want to get across and be very concise. Make sure you plan and prepare your visual aids, so your PowerPoint slides or your index cards or your posters. And very importantly, make sure you rehearse your presentation. Get its length right, ask a few friends to listen and give feedback, and think about the kind of questions that they might want to ask you at the end of the presentation. Rehearsal is key to really kind of reducing your nerves and getting everything in the right order and getting the main points across. So rehearse as many times as possible. You can break your presentation down into three main sections: your introduction, the main body and the conclusion. In your introduction, you want to capture your listener's attention, so perhaps begin with a question, a funny story, a startling comment or fact, or anything that will make them think and grab their attention. State your purpose, so tell them exactly what your talk's going to be about. So for example, you might want to start off, today I'm going to talk about, or this morning I'd like to explain, something that really kind of explains what you're going to be talking about. Present an outline of a talk, so make sure you signpost to the listeners what it is you're going to be talking about, the main points that you're going to be making and in what order. The main body of your presentation. So make sure you present your main points one by one in a logical order. Pause at the end of each point. This will give people enough time to take notes and really digest what you're saying. It'll also give you some time to actually think about what you're going to say next and get it clear in your head. Make it absolutely clear when you move to the next point. So for example, you might want to say, my next point is, or right, now that I've covered that, I'd like to explain, and so on. To make it very clear that when you're moving from one point to the next. Your conclusion. So restate the purpose of your talk and say that you've achieved your aim. So at this point you're really kind of summarising and telling the listeners what you've already told them, really kind of summing everything up. So summarise the main points, so perhaps using phrases like, so in conclusion, and make sure to thank the audience and actually invite questions. So this is where your kind of background reading and background research will have come in, giving you the confidence to sort of invite and answer any potential questions. And obviously if you have rehearsed with friends, if they've asked some questions, you might get an idea of the kind of things that you might be asked at the end of a presentation. Also looking at your assignment criteria might give you an idea of the kind of questions that your lecturer might want to be asking you at the end of the presentation as well. Okay, so that's the structure of your presentation. Now, how to actually deliver it? Well, make sure you talk to your audience. A presentation is not the same as an essay, so you actually want to kind of communicate and talk to them rather than actually reading out an assignment to them. If you read out your presentation as if it were an essay, your audience will very quickly lose concentration and get confused and not understand the main points that you're trying to make. So use your notes, cue cards or overheads as prompts and speak to the audience. Include everyone by looking at them and maintain eye contact, but try not to glare at particular members of the audience. Although you will be nervous, try not to let your nerves show and actually channel it into the kind of presentation. Make sure to speak loudly, slowly and clearly. Everyone in the room needs to be able to hear you. Don't rush. Speaking fast doesn't make you seem smarter, it'll only make it harder for other people to understand you. Emphasise key words. So the key points that you really want the audience to take away with them, make sure you speak them out slowly and loudly. Try and vary your voice quality. If you always use the same volume and pitch, your audience will very quickly switch off. And don't be afraid of using pauses, short periods of silence, to give you the chance to kind of gather your thoughts and the audience to kind of think about the points that you're making and actually digest the information. So obviously non-verbal communication is very important when giving a presentation. So make sure you stand up straight and comfortable. Make sure you hold your head up, make eye contact with your audience. Don't just address your lecturer or don't stare at a point on the carpet or the wall. If you don't actually include the audience within your presentation, they won't listen to you. So try and use your hands, facial expressions to really kind of emphasise the points that you're making. It'll really kind of make things more interesting for the audience, include them in the actual kind of talk and draw them into the information and points that you're actually trying to impart to them. Try not to turn your back on the audience, don't stare at the PowerPoint presentation, don't try and hide behind the lectern or a data projector. Make sure you can maintain eye contact with the audience and talk to them. So there are a number of visual aids that you can use to help you with your presentation. Obviously OHP, data projector, handouts, posters, demos, whiteboards. But remember, don't get too carried away spending time on these. It's really the content and information that you're trying to communicate with your audience that's the important thing here. You want your presentation slides and handouts to look good, but no matter how spectacular they look, if the information's not there, then they're going to fall flat. So it's really the information that you're trying to impart to your audience that's the important thing. So obviously PowerPoint is the most commonly used presentation software, but there are other alternatives like Prezi, but these points would apply to any software that you use. It can look very professional, but do make sure you've got a backup in case the technology fails. As we said earlier, don't spend all your preparation time on the graphics, no matter how many fancy transitions or animations you've got. If you haven't got the background information, the real content to your talk or presentation, then no amount of fancy graphics will save it. Another thing to remember is consistency. So if your slides have a particular transition, then make sure each slide uses the same transition. Don't overcrowd the presentation with fancy animations, fancy graphics that will distract a viewer from your actual main points, distract them from what you're saying and the information that you're presenting on your slides. So here we have a poorly designed slide. There's far too much information on there. It would distract any potential viewers. They'd be trying to read what that said rather than listening to what you're actually saying. Again, you have to think about where you're going to be holding your presentation. If it's in a lecture theatre, your audience may need to see the slides from quite a distance, so you may want to think about the size of font you're using. If your slide has subheadings and headings, you want to make sure you use a consistent font and size throughout the presentation to make sure that an audience member knows exactly what they're signifying. So consistency with your slide design is very important. Don't overwhelm the listener with information on the slides. They're really there to be a kind of prompt for you to talk to the audience using your background knowledge, using your background research. So they're not there to kind of distract the audience from what you're saying. Okay, so I hope you found this brief introduction to presentations useful. You can find out more about the Skills team on www.wlv.ac.uk/skills, or you can follow us on Facebook or Twitter, or watch our series of online tutorials on YouTube. Thanks for listening.